So if the mother is nitric oxide deficient for whatever reason, then she's going to develop high blood pressure and preeclampsia. And she's going to develop gestational diabetes and lead to insulin resistance. And so how do we overcome that? Number one, pay attention and don't do things that are disrupting nitric oxide production, and then focus on strategies that restore nitric oxide. But I think, a lot of people, some people get pregnant easy. Some people go through their entire life and struggle with conception and getting pregnant. And I think it's part of what's natural selection. Number one, if you're not healthy, then there's no way you can support and advance a new life inside you.
Yeah. All right, welcome to another episode of Heartbeat Happy Hour. I'm your host, Anthony Turturro, co-host Dr. Nathan Bryan. How are you, sir?
Good.
Good. Cheers,
welcome,
my friend.
Cheers. Heartbeat Happy Hour at night.
There you go. Now, you might recognize we're at a different location now. We're doing a special episode from Dr. Bryan's ranch. So thank you for having us out.
Yeah, welcome.
Fireside chat.
Fireside chat by the pool.
Yeah.
It's a great day.
So tonight's episode is going to be about pregnancy.
Okay.
All right, serious topic. Very concerning to a lot of people. It's a blessing of life, but also a concern when people are going through it.
Yeah.
Right? There's several trimesters. You're focused on the overall general well-being that your child's going to come into this new life with. Let's kind of break it down a little bit, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of supplements that are out there, nutrition types of advice that are out there for your different trimesters and so forth, right? What do you see is key around the importance of the child's development in each of the trimesters?
Well, look, we can't forget that the conception and childbirth is really a miracle. I mean, think about the miracle of, when you think about everything that has to happen at the right time, when one sperm meets one egg and they meet, and then 9 months later you get a live human being.
Yeah,
I mean, despite the advancement in the science, I mean, that is the miracle of conception and the miracle of childbirth. But we've learned a lot in the science, and so it's a continuous process, right? I mean, you break it up into these trimesters to try to give an understanding of development of certain stages in these different trimesters or stages of the baby developing. But I think, a lot of people, some people get pregnant easy. Some people go through their entire life and struggle with conception and getting pregnant. And I think it's part of what's natural selection. Number one, if you're not healthy, then there's no way you can support and advance a new life inside you.
Yeah.
So number one, you have to be healthy. The mother has to be healthy. The dad has to be healthy. The egg has to be functional. The sperm have to be functional. And when they meet, you have to have the internal environment that will allow the replication of those cells for the differentiation, the formation of every organ and cell in that body, in that growing baby or embryo. So obviously you've got to have good nutrition. You've got to have the right nutrients. Your body's got to be free of toxins that allow for that baby to develop and to be born healthy and live a long, productive life. But I think what we're struggling with is that, the supplements and prenatal vitamins that were designed to give the mother what she needs to support this growing baby. But I think you can overdo it. Folate, leading to neural tube defects, folate deficiency and neural tube defects, probably recognized 60, 70 years ago.
Okay.
And now they started supplementing a lot of foods. Bread's fortified with folate. A lot of foods that we eat are fortified with folate. And then if you take prenatal vitamins, you're getting, and so I think we can overdo it. And so it goes back to this principle. It's very hard to prescribe a one-size-fits-all, one prenatal vitamin for the entire population when there's no regard to their individual nutrient status, what other vitamins they're taking, what their diet is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're moving into this period of personalized medicine, because you have to understand the nutrient status and the health status of the mother, of the father, optimize that, and then let the miracle of childbirth and conception, do its job.
Yeah. You mentioned fluoride?
Folate.
Folate. Okay, folate. That it fortified certain foods, but at the same time was considered a nutrient for the body, right? For like a prenatal or something like that. I'm almost thinking too, like it makes me think of fluoride.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's used in toothpaste, but then it's in all these other areas, but it's actually a toxin.
Yeah.
Neurotoxin. When you say that it fortifies food, what do you mean by that?
Well, the food industry has tried to make foods that are replete in nutrients. So, calcium in milk, calcium fortified, baby formulas, iron fortified baby formulas. There's iron fortification in a lot of things, bread. And so you can overdo it. And it's if you're putting these nutrients in food supplies with no regard to the individual nutrient status of the consumer, you run the risk of overdoing it. Yeah, for some people it may be beneficial if they're deficient in it, but some people like us who are completely, aware of our nutrient status, I would typically avoid things that I don't need. I think that's the power of nutrient analysis, micronutrient analysis, doing routine tests to figure out, I need to know what my body's missing.
Yeah.
I need to know what's in my body that may be disrupting normal metabolism and remove the things that are disruptive, replete missing nutrients that's going to affect my body. And you bring up fluoride, fluoride's in the toothpaste, it's in the municipal water supply. We're overexposed to fluoride. And it's obvious that women who have low thyroid have a very difficult time conceiving.
Really?
And if you remember from the periodic table, fluoride is what we call a halogen. It's on the same category as chloride, or chlorine, as iodine, bromide. And so we need iodine for normal thyroid function.
Okay.
The Western diet is completely devoid of any iodine. So number one, 95% of Americans are deficient in iodine. And then fluoride's in everything. So fluoride competes with iodine for binding to the thyroid hormone. And so they become completely hypothyroidism. And these women can't conceive. And I've heard hundreds of case reports of women that haven't been able to conceive. You fix their thyroid function, you normalize their thyroid, and they conceive. I mean, the thyroid is considered by many a master hormone regulator.
Yeah.
And so we have to focus on that. And again, so it's both. It's a nutrient deficiency because there's not enough iodine, and there's toxicity from too much fluoride. And what does that mean? Well, it causes dysbiosis because fluoride's an antiseptic. It's a neurotoxin, and it completely shuts down your thyroid function. So this is one of those conditions where you got to ask the right questions in that individual patient and start to test. But just telling everybody to take a prenatal vitamin that contains a certain amount of nutrients that were obviously, with some type of reasoning, put in a prenatal vitamin to help a growing embryo and development of a baby. But some people may not need that, and it may be causing more risk than benefit. But again, it goes back to the individual personalized health status of the people trying to conceive. The health status of the man, the health status of the woman. If they're not healthy, then natural selection will tell us that if you're unhealthy and you can't support your own life and well-being, then there's no way you can support a growing baby inside you. And typically they'll either not conceive or they'll have spontaneous abortions and the baby will basically not survive.
So basically, there's a box. Not everyone fits in the box. You need to really identify yourself personally of what your own deficiencies are.
That's right.
Basically, if you're saying for someone who's in that first trimester, really first you need to identify what your own body's deficiencies are to even know how to best actually help produce a healthy child.
Well, look, if you're in the first trimester, that means that there was actual conception.
Yes.
Right? You've got a growing, living human being inside your body. And it's that first trimester where really the critical stages of development occur. You get, the critical stages of embryonic development, and you start to get the development of the essential and the critical organs. And if anything goes wrong in that first trimester, then it's an unsuccessful pregnancy. And it's typically, the baby will spontaneously abort, and then, sometimes you have to have a D&C to remove that from the body. But once you get past the first trimester, then the chances of you having a successful delivery increase. But you still got to support that. There's still a lot that has to happen in that second and third trimester. So again, this is a continuous process, but you have to get past all that critical development, and then, but you still have to support it throughout the entire pregnancy.
True. Yeah, and then moving on to the second trimester, this is really more of the growth and development of the overall child, right? And by week 20, Mayo Clinic saying typically this is when the female will start feeling movement.
Yeah.
Right? Is there anything different that you would say in the second trimester than the first trimester of where you really need to be more on point, whether it's taking certain vitamins or so forth?
Well, I think it's the first trimester is obviously very critical. And so if you've made it there, then you don't want to make any drastic changes, right? No changes in diet, no changes in medication, probably no changes in their supplement, because I tell people all the time, if what you're doing is working, don't get away from what works. If you've conceived and you've made it for the first trimester, then don't change anything. Yeah. Because obviously things are going well enough for that baby to survive that. Obviously all the critical organs are developing. It's a viable baby at that point, then keep doing what you're doing. Certainly don't make any drastic changes to your diet, your exercise regimen. Don't take on any new medications. And then just manage your pregnancy. Listen to your body. Look, it's very tough on the woman because she has a foreign body growing inside her. Oh, yeah. It's not her own DNA. It's the DNA from her and the father. And so this is a foreign body growing inside her that she has to not only provide for her own health and nutrition, but she's got to now provide for a rapidly dividing, growing baby inside her body that several months later she's going to deliver into this world and hopefully be a healthy, productive member of society.
Now, third trimester, brain development. Studies show about a 400% growth in actual brain size growth during that time frame. We talk a lot about nitric oxide.
Yeah.
Right? Now, yes, nutrients, vitamins, and so forth help with the development. Where does nitric oxide play a role in the overall pre-birth development of a child?
Well, look, nitric oxide is important from the conception to the delivery of the baby. Number one, you have to have adequate circulation to the placenta. Let's back up. The sperm motility is determined by nitric oxide production. Men who have low nitric oxide have low sperm numbers and low sperm motility. So you could have actual normal levels of sperm, but if the sperm aren't mobile enough to get to the egg and fertilize it, then you're not going to be able to conceive.
Okay.
And so once there's conception, then obviously you have to have new blood vessels supplied, new angiogenesis, new blood vessels basically supplying that growing embryo. And without nitric oxide, you don't get that adequate blood vessel development, angiogenesis, adequate blood supply, and oxygen delivery to that baby. And now that's the same throughout the entire pregnancy. But it's really in the third trimester where you start to see, some women develop preeclampsia, which is the gestational hypertension. And sometimes you'll see gestational diabetes. And if you look at the science of what nitric oxide does, nitric oxide is what dilates the blood vessels, regulates blood pressure, and nitric oxide is what allows for insulin signaling and glucose uptake. So if the mother is nitric oxide deficient for whatever reason, then she's going to develop high blood pressure and preeclampsia. And she's going to develop gestational diabetes and lead to insulin resistance. And so how do we overcome that? Number one, pay attention and don't do things that are disrupting nitric oxide production, and then focus on strategies that restore nitric oxide. But the problem in preeclampsia is really the only proven way in so-called the standard of care to save the mother's life from the hypertensive crisis in preeclampsia is to deliver the baby. And now you're delivering a premature baby that's going to have health consequences and some liabilities if they have underdeveloped organs. So the whole thought process is if you can, in preeclampsia, if you can extend gestation, if you can manage the mother's blood pressure and allow for that baby to incubate inside the mom to full term, now the chances of that baby being delivered healthy are much better. Now, the problem with most antihypertensives used in preeclampsia is they cause an increase in intracranial pressures, and that can lead to seizures in the pregnant mom. And so what nitric oxide does, because it's naturally produced, if we can just restore the production of nitric oxide, we can enhance blood supply to the placenta, to the growing embryo. We can normalize blood pressure, and you don't see an increase in intracranial pressures.
Okay.
Because we're basically restoring normal physiology. And I think that's why an important consideration for OB-GYNs who deal with these high-risk pregnancies, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, is start the conversation on nitric oxide. Are these mothers using mouthwash that are destroying the microbiome that's partly responsible for producing nitric oxide? Are they using a fluorinated toothpaste that, again, is an antiseptic, killing the oral microbiome that's responsible for producing nitric oxide? Are they eating a high-sugar diet that's causing the gestational diabetes and downregulating nitric oxide production and then causing increased risk for preeclampsia? And just modify their diet, eliminate the things that are destroying nitric oxide production. And I think what we're learning is that it can lead to not only an increased probability of conception, but the development over 9 months of that baby and a successful delivery of a healthy baby without health problems is what we're all looking for.
Oh, definitely. 100%. Now, going to first, second, third trimester, now the baby's born, and that big decision comes on breastfeed or not. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, look, again, we have to look at the data, and the data tell us that there's enormous health disparities between formula-fed and breastfed babies.
Okay.
So formula-fed babies have higher incidence of all type allergies. They have a higher incidence of cardiovascular disease later in life. They have a higher incidence of immunological issues. And I think all-cause mortality. And breastfed babies are protected from that. So there's obviously something in breast milk that's absent in formula, or there's something present in formula that's absent in breast milk. So again, it goes back to this basic concept, providing nutrients or providing toxins.
Okay.
And so breast milk, for years, it was thought that it's just the transmission of immunoglobulins and immune cells that then allow that baby to have a robust immune system. And in formula, there's nothing there, right? It's just basically the nutrients that are found in breast milk that they try to recapitulate and reform. But what we're finding is, and we published on this, I believe, in 2011, is that breast milk is providing a source of nitric oxide.
Okay.
And so we know the importance of the microbiome in producing nitric oxide. But when babies are born, they're sterile, right? They've been inside their mother, so they have really no colonization of oral bacteria or the gastrointestinal bacteria. So we published on this in 2011 that breast milk actually delivers a source of nitric oxide to the baby.
Okay.
Because babies are born sterile. They don't have the right oral microbiome or the gut microbiome. So this takes time to colonize.
Okay.
So nature's developed an exquisite system whereby the breast milk, well, it's the colostrum in the first couple of days. The colostrum is enriched in nitrite, which doesn't require bacterial activation. So the breast milk secretes nitrite into the baby, and that provides a source of nitric oxide. Now, what we found was on day 5, 6, 7, when they start to get gut colonization, microbiome colonization in the oral cavity, then the breast milk switches from nitrite to nitrate, because now the baby has the right oral bacteria to convert nitrate into nitrite. And formula is completely devoid of this. And here's the other thing. Cesarean babies have a much different microbiome than vaginally delivered babies. And so we have to support this oral microbiome and give the baby a source of nitric oxide early on that's found in breast milk and completely absent in formula. And I think that explains, along with the immune benefits of breastfeeding, it's the early exposure to nitric oxide in that new infant that provides the cardiovascular support, that provides insulin signaling, glucose uptake, that really can explain the benefits later in life: lower cardiovascular disease, lower diabetes, lower allergies and autoimmune issues. So nitric oxide, from conception to delivery, again, and throughout that baby's life and to adulthood, nitric oxide is absolutely essential in the process of life and really in the miracle of childbirth and really living a long, productive life.
You know, I find that intriguing in many ways, but in one way specifically, you mentioned nitrite.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the breast milk actually comes in a nitrite form, which then helps develop the infant into being able to create nitric oxide.
That's right.
Now, I know you've developed many supplements as well, and from what I understand, you have a similar form where you're delivering, say, your Beats product.
Yeah.
So how do those actually compare with each other in the delivery?
Well, what we do is, again, going back to what we consider restorative physiology, right? We understand how much nitric oxide the human body makes. We know how much nitric oxide and nitrite's being secreted in breast milk. We know how much of volume the baby consumes at each stage of development when they're suckling on the breast and consuming breast milk. And so we want to give that back in our products. So we don't want to give too little. We don't want to give too much. And two, if we were relying on the microbiome to do this for us, then we would create products that would have a differential response in every patient out there. So what we do in our Beats and our lozenges is we pre-convert that. So we're giving a usable form of nitric oxide that really is the breast milk is providing to a newborn infant. And we deliver that source of nitric oxide in our products. It's not dependent upon the oral microbiome. It's not dependent upon stomach acid production. It's not dependent upon your ability to make nitric oxide. If your body can't make it, we do it for you. Obviously, the baby don't have the right bacteria, so the breast milk provides it for you. And so that's what we copy. We try to recapitulate nature.
That's crazy, man. I love
Yeah.
it. I'll tell you, I've known you for over 12 years. I continue to just learn stuff off of you all the time.
Well,
Hey,
that's the point.
I appreciate it.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed tonight's episode, stay tuned for more, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Take care.